Hey there everyone, my name is Derek. You probably know me as Derek Harps On, which is my YouTube handle. And I'm here today because I have a fantastic opportunity to test out some harps. My friend is on a trip to New Zealand for a few months, and she asked me if I could take care of her precious Salvi Una. So like any harp-obsessed individual, I instantly said yes, and I asked her if I could do a comparison video for everyone on the YouTube web. I thought it would be a fantastic opportunity to offer everybody a little insight on two brands that are very highly established and renowned, but might not have had an actual comparison in regards to their sound. We have the Salvi Una Deluxe, a professional lever harp made by Salvi. This harp is the deluxe model, meaning that there's some gold on the levers. There's also some really great decoration on the soundboard. And of course we have my beloved Dusty Strings Crescendo, which has been my faithful companion for a few years. I thought it would be great to test out these harps because although there's a lot of really great videos where we're testing the Dusty Strings Ravenna versus the Lion & Healy Ogden, we don't actually have a lot of materials where we're actually testing some of the more professional harps. We definitely see a really great sound clips and examples from the Dusty Strings FH line or potentially the Salvi pedal harps. But often we have these two professional lever harps that tend to fade away when it comes to sound tests. I thought it would be really great to be able to do a comparison, a contrast. I thought I could provide you a little bit of insight on how I've experienced both of these harps from a playing perspective, from an owner perspective, and really just be able to provide anyone who's looking for more information about both harps before maybe they make a purchase, or maybe they're looking into what an upgraded harp might sound like. And I'm really happy to be able to share this opportunity with everyone. There's a few things that I should mention, of course, to get questions out of the way. I am not a salesman. I do not get represented by Salvi or Dusty Strings. They don't pay my wage, unfortunately, but that does mean that I can provide a very honest review and insights in regards to my experience with these harps. I'll also make sure that all of my equipment is located in the same place, and so therefore any sound clips, any chords, any type of music that you hear will be comparable when it comes to the Crescendo and the Una. I'll also share my own experience with the Dusty Strings Crescendo. There's definitely some things that I think if you're a potential buyer of this harp, you might want to know before you consider upgrading or purchasing. I can also share some of my experiences when it comes to playing these harps. What is the string tension? What is the string spacing? What does that height look like? Happy to provide that type of insight. And ultimately, this is a fun experience. It's a really great way to really understand the harp that I'm playing as well as other people's harps and how they are different, how they're the same, what makes one tick versus what's another's bread and butter. And I'm happy to provide that type of info. That being said, I am a beginner harpist. I'm not a professional, so any mistakes are of course my own. Any of my insights are insights coming from a beginner's lens, and I definitely don't have the harp maker's understanding of what goes into these wonderful harps. I just know how they feel, how they sound, and whether or not it feels great for me. So keep that in mind. The last thing that I'm going to mention is, of course, one is not better than the other. This is a comparison of two fantastic harps, and any type of comparison of harps does need to have that understanding that what sounds great to one person isn't going to sound great to another, and each of us has our own journey when it comes to what a harp should feel like, what they're ultimately looking for when it comes to ergonomics. And so neither of these harps are in competition, rather it's just really great to better understand the sounds that they make, and really to better understand whether or not this could potentially be a harp for you. So with that being said, let's talk about what we're going to cover in this video. I'd like to test both harps when it comes to chords, so I can provide an overview of how many strings they have, what that string spacing looks like. We're going to play a few notes for you so that you can understand exactly the feel and the sound of the harp throughout the entire range. And then I'd also like to play an excerpt of a piece that I've been working on. So really happy to share that. It's a piece that's hopefully going to go the entire range of the harp so that you have a really strong understanding of what the bass sounds like, what the higher notes sound like, which sometimes can get a little missed in some of these comparisons. So without further ado, really excited to take you with me. So we're going to start off with the Salvi Una. I can share a little bit of my experience so far in regards to the harp. Of course, keep in mind that I've only had it for a few days, so all of this is very preliminary in regards to what I can share. Let's start with the levers. So Salvi actually makes their own levers. They are very smooth. It's really fantastic. It's intuitive to play. I have no real concerns. This is the deluxe version, so I believe this is gold plated. Of course, I don't think many harpists need a gold plated harp, but it's there if you want it. It definitely adds to the luster of this harp, and it's fantastic against the mahogany finish. But in regards to these levers, really great. They are very similar to Lyman Healy, to Truett levers, and I've played a few pieces where it does require that lever change, and it's quite seamless in regards to how it cinches the string. There's actually a bit of rubber on each lever that just helps protect the string a little bit more, and it has a much nicer, smoother glide to the raising of the pitch. So definitely great levers so far. When we talk about the string spacing, it's a little bit tighter than the Crescendo. It's much more like a pedal harp or a gut stringed harp, where that string spacing is still tighter. When you think about the strings, these strings do have a little bit more of a tight feel to them. They're a little bit more taut, and so playing, you can definitely sink your weight in just a little bit more, whereas the Crescendo encourages a light touch. The Una really does excel in dynamics when you're using a little bit more weight or a little bit more pressure applied to the string. So that's something that I've noticed. Another interesting thing is that the Una does not come with a carrying case. So it does have a dust cover, which is great for day-to-day use, but if you do want to take this harp out in the world, maybe you're performing for your church or your family, you will need to buy a separate case, which is an interesting change from the Crescendo, which actually comes with a case. Now, the Una does not have a different size for the legs. You will need to adjust your bench or harp stool down because it is quite a bit lower to the floor. When we look at what makes the Una really special, according to the website, we see that the octave below middle C actually comes with something they call copper wound strings. An interesting feel, but not very different when it comes to nylon wrapped strings. They play very similar to how you would play your thinner metal strings, and I will admit that something for the Una is that those strings are specialty. So you will need to have a harp dealer that does sell Una strings, that their string set does require these copper wound strings. On to the number of strings for the Una. It actually has 38 strings. Now, that being said, a lot of harpists can get away with 34 strings. It's not a requirement to have these extra 2 bass notes and these extra 2 high notes. But it is very helpful, especially if you're delving into classical music. If you want that rich resonance towards the bass of your harp, it's definitely going to help with that. Now, in regards to the lowest note, we have an A. And we have a high C. If we're to play C chords, and if we were to play G7 chords, you might have seen that bit of force on the F. That's something that I will mention. Whereas the crescendo requires that gentle touch, the Una doesn't. You can put a lot of pressure in your higher strings and they're going to sound resonant, full. It does have a limit, but it definitely helps when it comes to using dynamics. And that's something that I will admit with the Una that I found is that dynamics are actually a little bit easier to play around because you're not so worried about that threshold of will I overpower a string. It's still going to sound very nice, regardless of whether or not you're using a light touch or if you're using a bit more of a weighted touch. Okay. We're going to move on to our tunes. I'll see you then. Okay. starting off with the Dusty Strings Crescendo. As the owner of this harp, I do have a few insights in regards to the functionality, some of the great things that come with the harp, along with some of the things that you might not be able to tell from their website. So I'm happy to provide that. Again, I don't want to skew your perception of the harp, especially since this is more of a sound test in comparison, but I do want to just mention a few things if you are interested in purchasing a crescendo, some of the things just to keep in mind. The first thing that I'll mention is the levers. So this harp will automatically come fully levered, which is fantastic. Their default are actually these Loveland levers. Now, there's been quite a bit of controversy in regards to, do we like these levers? Do harpists not like these levers? I find them to be okay. They definitely do the job. They're easy to regulate, which is fantastic. But because of how they cinch the string, how they raise the tone, it can be very challenging to really get a smooth motion. I'll try and do this, and I'm not sure if you can hear that, but you can actually hear the plastic lever scraping against the metal, which if you're playing notes in succession and then you want to quickly flip the lever, that's going to cause a bit of a twang. And so it's definitely something to keep in mind. Now, it's very easy to upgrade if you're ordering this harp from Dusty Strings to upgrade to Kamak or Truett levers. And I would recommend that. I've been fine with these levers, but I do wish that they were a little smoother. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we look at the Salvi Una. The other thing that I want to just mention is that this harp actually has a default leg size for the harp. So it'll automatically come with the smaller set of legs. Now you can upgrade your leg height, so they actually do make larger ones, which are incredibly convenient for slightly taller harpists. On a good day, I'm 6 feet, and I found that the smaller feet for the harp actually made it very challenging to play. A lot of back issues after a few months of playing. Once I got the larger legs, those back problems went away. So if you're slightly taller, you may want to invest in the larger legs. Now, when I ordered this harp, I was given that option. I was also given the option of upgrading the levers. So definitely something to keep in mind. You may want to do that, and I'd encourage you to do so based on your height, based on your experience with levers. The last thing that I want to note about the crescendo is just the string spacing. So I would describe the string spacing as fairly medium to loose. Now keep in mind, I typically play a pedal harp, and so these strings definitely aren't the tension of a pedal harp. They're not supposed to be. However, I will admit that it is quite a give. So if you do have arthritis or challenges when it comes to strength in your hands, this is a fantastic harp where you can create a really wonderful sound without a lot of pressure. And I've actually found that with these strings and this harp, the less pressure that you apply, the more beautiful of a sound you're going to get. It's definitely a fine balance. And any harpist can definitely talk about that threshold of the amount of weight or the amount of pressure or how engaged you want your finger to be in this string. And so with this harp, it definitely encourages and appreciates a more gentle touch. It also can be overworked quite easily, especially in the higher register where you're going to get a more twangy or twinky sound rather than that really full resonance that you might be looking for. That's everything about the crescendo. Let's talk about the number of strings. So the crescendo comes in 34 strings. The lowest string is going to be your low C, and your highest string is going to be your high A. Now, if we were to play just some C chords, happy to do that. some G7 chords. Really great. Okay, I'll see you when we play our tune, which is coming up next. You're still with me, which is fantastic. At this point, you've heard the Salvi Una, you've heard the Dusty Strings Crescendo. I'd love it if you would tell me in the comments which harp resonates with you. What are some questions that potentially I could answer while I still have both of these harps? And ultimately, if there's anything else that you'd like to see in regards to a comparison, I'm happy to play that. So whether or not it's really exploring the upper range of one of the harps, or whether it's different pieces that might utilize different areas of harp playing, I'm happy to do that. So make sure that you put a comment, click the subscribe button, and of course like this video. Thanks everyone, really appreciative that you're joining me on this journey, and I can't wait to share more of my harp journey with you. Thanks.